Hi, this is Kim Thompson-Pinder, and I am an award-winning speaker. I'm an international best-selling author. I am the Extraordinary Word Ninja, and I am also the Chief Visionary Officer of RTI Publishing. But on top of that, I'm also a wife of 28 years. I am a mother of 2 adult children, and love this. I am Nana to the sweetest 3-month-old grandson there is. And I couldn't be prouder to enter this new stage of life. And if you're joining me here today, why don't you write a comment? Let me know you're here. Let me acknowledge you and see who's on today. Because I'm going to be talking about how solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, professionals, and small business owners can increase their income, impact, and influence. So this is going to be a jam-packed 30-minute session. So like I said, leave me a comment. Let me know that you've been on. I see that a few people are on, and I'd love to know who's watching today. But as we get started, I introduced myself as a whole bunch of things. But when I was a little girl, there was only one thing I was. I was the invisible girl who could not write. Yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it? I turned out to be a publisher, but I could not write. And it started when I was 4 years old and my mother died of cancer. And yeah, you're probably all sitting there right now just kind of in a stunned silence. I can feel it coming through the screen, and I appreciate it because who's a 4-year-old without a mother? Well, my sister and I were. And up to that point in my life, I felt like a regular kid. But when my mother died, something changed. Now, thankfully, I don't have one of those stories that goes, my mother died when I was 4 years old and I had this drunk, abusive father. Thankfully, that's not my story. My dad was amazing. And maybe one of these times on one of these Facebook Lives, I'll get to share with you the exciting adventures that my dad and I had, especially with me being the oldest. And the first time I had to buy a bra, or actually we had to buy me a bra. And then when, that time came, period time, and, the first time, no pads in the house, and my dad works over an hour away. So maybe one of these times I will share with you those incredible stories of what my dad had to go through raising my sister and I. And so my dad just loved us. When my mom died at the age of 4, a lot of the family members looked at him and said, "David, there's no way that you can raise 2 little girls on your own." And in language that's not appropriate for a Facebook Live, so I won't share exactly what he said here, but he basically told them to either help him or take a flying leap. And I am so thankful that he did. But as great as my dad was, he wasn't a mother. I craved that feminine affirmation. And in grade 2, I got my first female teacher. Oh, it was amazing. I loved it. She was pretty and she was beautiful and she was smart and she was all the things that I wanted to be. And in my mind, she became my mom. And you know what? I emotionally overwhelmed this poor lady, because I was this needy 7-year-old who felt different than everybody else. And when I was 7, I learned how to write. And all these things, I have this vivid imagination. Even to this day, my imagination is strong. And I started writing down stories and I gave them to her and she loved the stories. So every day I started giving her more and more and more and more and more stories. And then the day came when I became invisible. Because you see, I already felt different than all the other kids. It didn't help that I was motherless, but I was also a foot taller than any other kid. I was half black, half white, with a red afro. It just didn't fit in. But that day, my teacher said to me, she said, "Kim, I don't want you to write anymore. You're not a good writer. And those words crushed my little 7-year-old heart. And that was the day I decided that it wasn't worth trying to stand out. It wasn't worth trying to be excellent. So I decided to become invisible. Have you ever felt like that? Can you give me some thumbs up and some hearts if you've ever felt invisible? You know, you wanted to be appreciated for who you are and what you could do, and yet nobody seemed to care and nobody noticed. And that's how I lived for probably almost 30 years after that. Now, I grew up and I wrote for school and I got married and I became a mom. It's one of the best things that I've ever done in life. But I needed more. And so about, I guess, almost 10 years ago now, I was an entrepreneur. I was building teams. And I had an opportunity to get my own website. Yeah, website. That was pretty cool. And it was even going to be built for me. Well, even better, man. I didn't have to learn how to build a website myself. And I was so excited. And then the time came and I got the email and the website was ready and the gentleman emailed me and said, "Oh yeah, now you can do your blog." And I had to email him back. I'm like, "What's a blog?" Didn't even know what a blog was at that point in my life. And he emailed me back and he said, "Kim, you write things." Now, for 30 years, I had carried the words that I was not a good writer and I should not write. So you can imagine the dilemma I'm in. I've paid all this money for a website that I'm not going to be able to use because I'm afraid to write. And I had to really dig deep and do a lot of soul searching because there was a part of me that just wanted to say, I don't care. I just keep the money. I don't want the website, like get rid of it. But then there was this, you know, that small little voice that sometimes you get inside of you. And that small voice said, "Kim, you're not that 7-year-old girl anymore. Why don't you try? You're smart. Even if you couldn't write then, maybe you're not a great writer now, but you can learn." And so I did. And the first step in that journey was I forgave that teacher. And I also came to the realization that she was probably pretty young. I don't think she was married. Had no clue if she had kids. I don't think so. And I can guarantee you back in the 1970s, at least here where I live in Canada, they did not teach you in teachers college how to deal with emotionally needy, motherless 7-year-old girls. I don't think that's a course. And so I had to come to a decision, and I decided to forgive her. Why? Because she didn't do it intentionally. I know that now. She didn't do it to hurt me. She just didn't know how to deal with me. And yes, those words were horrible and definitely not the right thing to say, but it wasn't in malice. It was in frustration. And so I chose to forgive her, and it was time for me to move on. So now here I am, and I've got loose leaf sheets of paper. Remember the ones we used in school? And I started out with a pen, then I went to a pencil. 3 days later, after I don't know how many pieces I crumped up, threw away. I mean, my floor was covered with pieces of paper that I had started over and over and over again. But 3 days later, I had a half-page blog post, and I put it up on my site. Now, have you guys ever been afraid to try something? You know you have to do it. You know it's good for you, but you're afraid. Well, that was me. I posted it. Like I put it on my website, but I couldn't hit that post button. And finally, I'm like, oh, this is stupid. I've got to do this. So I did. I did it with fear and trembling. And then the next big step, I asked somebody to read it. And guess what? They read it. They liked it. not only did they like it, it helped them. And I'm like, oh, oh, that excited feeling when you feel like finally you're starting to be the real you. And that was the feeling. And that was the start of me not being the invisible girl who couldn't write anymore. And within a year or so, I knew I had to start writing books. Now, by this point, I had conquered a lot of the fear, but it was still a battle. In fact, it took me a year and a half to write that first book. And I hit a crossroads where I almost quit. Like I was like, basically I was done because I couldn't figure out how to write a book. I had spent months trying to figure out. And it's not like I had, thousands of dollars for courses. I could scrape together, 50, maybe $100 if I really had to for a course. But there wasn't a lot of courses out there at that time on self-publishing, and definitely not ones that were like 50 to $100. These courses were like thousands of dollars. I didn't have that. And so I had to figure it out. And I came to the crossroads and I thought, what am I going to do? And that small little voice said, well, why don't you at least write out all the ideas you're thinking of putting into a book? Yeah, I could do that. That's pretty easy to do. And so I did that. 3 weeks, day, night. I had a pen and paper beside my bed, and I would get up in the dark, writing on a piece of paper in the dark so I wouldn't wake up my husband. 3 weeks later, I finally realized my problem. I didn't have one book to write. I had 3. And that process freed me up so much that within 1 year, I was able to write and publish all 3 books. But guess what? That wasn't even the most incredible thing. And this is where we're going to focus in today on the training. After I became an author, I wrote those books because I had team members across my country of Canada that were part of my company, the company I worked for, and they needed training. And it was a lot easier for me to write the books, give them the books, and then answer questions afterwards. And I needed a vehicle to be able to deliver these books for them, so I published them on Amazon, because then every once in a while I could give them away for free or I could sell them for 99 cents. My goal really wasn't to make money, it was just to help people. So I wrote books on recruiting, I wrote books on sales, how to sell $10,795 a year in your home-based business. I wrote motivational books, my MLM Mindset Minutes. So I did all of these books, and I've done quite a few more. I've done Sudoku books and planners and things. Those were for fun. But when I went to my first company convention, that was when I truly stopped being invisible. That was when I realized that it was my time to shine and it was my time to get out there and it was time for the world to see who I really was. I went to that convention. Now, some people had contacted me and said, Kim, can you bring a few books with you? Because, I had posted it everywhere and people across the country in my company had read my books. When I arrived at that convention, I walked in, I was walking up to the registration table, and all of a sudden I was surrounded. And for the rest of that convention, I spent that convention surrounded by people who wanted copies of my books, who wanted to tell me how much my books meant to them. And by the time that weekend was over, I was actually being paid to coach people. Now, I did not go to that event thinking I was going to come out as a coach. I went to that event to enjoy the event, have fellowship, get training, learn all the new things that were going on in my company. And all of a sudden, I was the star of the show. In fact, I got more attention than the main speakers did. The whole time I was there, I had people surrounding me. Now, the knowledge had always been there. In fact, I had shared most of that knowledge in my blog posts. But what made the difference? What made me invisible? What made me sought after? It was the fact that I was an author. And I didn't realize it then. But becoming an author is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do to increase your impact, income, and influence. You see, no matter what you do, there's a whole group of people who do the same thing you do. Now, I know you are unique, you're special, you're incredible, but people don't know that. All they see you is lumped in with everybody else. You sit in what I call the ocean of obscurity. And when you're in that ocean of obscurity, excuse me, people can't tell that you're special, that you're extraordinary, that you have skills, talents, and abilities that are going to make a difference in their lives. All they see is you're another whatever. So, you're another MLMer, you're another real estate agent, you're another financial advisor, you're another professional. Like whatever it is that you do, you're sitting in this ocean of obscurity. And that's why building your business is really hard, because nobody knows who you are. I think of that television show, Cheers, where everybody knows your name. Well, you see, when you're in the ocean of obscurity, nobody knows your name. You're like a light bulb in a bin of light bulbs, indistinguishable from every other one. Think of it when you go to a store and you're standing in the cereal aisle and, there's all these boxes of Rice Krispies. Well, how do you decide which box of Rice Krispies do you pick? You don't. You just grab the first one that's there. And that's why you need to become an author. Because once you do that, there's a perception that authors are experts. So let me share with you a quick story. Now, this happened to a friend of mine, and she actually happened to her before I ever met her. So I didn't actually write her book. Now, she had grown up and had gotten hepatitis C during an operation. And so she had lived her whole life with hepatitis C. Now, thankfully, in the last couple of years, they came out with a semi-cure. So it's mostly gone out of her body. So that's a really amazing thing. But she lived over 50 years with hepatitis C, and she's actually lived quite successfully with it. And she decided that she wanted to write a book that was going to help other people with hepatitis C live better. Now, her goal was only to help people. But during this process, she started telling people that she was writing a book. And an amazing thing happened. Before she even wrote the book, she ended up on television, she ended up on radio, and she actually ended up in her city's hepatitis conference as a main speaker. And there were doctors who could not get on that stage. She hadn't even written the book yet. All she was doing was writing it, and she got on that stage. Why? The perception is that when you're an author, you're an expert, and you're someone to be listened to. So there's 4 rungs to business success. And, I'm going to go through them, but just write them down and think about them. So the first one is invisible. That's that ocean of obscurity. Then the next is expert. So when you're an expert, you're maybe not well known, but when you talk to people, they can see your expertise and they want to work with you because they know you know what you're doing. The next level is authority. Now, when you reach the level of authority, which is about where I'm sitting right now, business starts to come to you. Your name is getting out there. You're a well-known expert. You're authority. You've worked with clients. You're getting referrals. People know your name and they want to work with you because they know that you can provide. So when you become an authority, generating business is easy. You don't have to do a lot of work to generate business when you're an authority. People know who you are and they want to work with you. Now, the next level above that is influencer. Now, that's a hard level to reach. That's like Tony Robbins-like level. And that you only reach through years of hard work, growing, networking, building your following, That's not something that happens overnight. And sometimes we think it does, like, oh, they were immediate success, but you don't see the years, the hard years of growth when they were invisible and nobody really knew who they were. They just didn't quit until everybody knew their name. So there is a way, though, to immediately jump from invisible to expert, and that's to become an author. Now, I'm going to share something with you. If you have a hard time generating leads for your business, and I know I am going to say the S word. I'm sorry, but it has to come out. The S word is sales. No matter what you're in, business in, you have to sell. When you have a big company, you can hire people to sell. But when you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, a professional, a small business owner, you have to sell. So you need to find ways to sell easier so you can actually do the things that you enjoy in your business. So let me show you really quickly a great way that you can sell in your business using your book. So let's pretend that you're at a networking event. And I know when I go to networking events, I'm just like, I had to come up with some really unique ways to introduce myself. So that's where the Extraordinary Word Ninja came from, because I was tired of telling people that I was just a plain old publisher. So now I'm the Extraordinary Word Ninja, and people are really curious about what I do. But let's get back to helping you be able to use a book to introduce yourself. Now, this works whether you've written a book or whether you are working on your book. Either way works. So when you're at an event, let the other person talk first. Ask them questions. Figure out if they're a good potential client for you. And that's why you let them talk first, because you want to know whether you do this next step or not, because it does cost you a few dollars. You have to have printed books with you. So you want to determine before you go into this that it's even worthwhile. But let's say that you've had this conversation, you realize, oh man, I really want to work with this person. This person would be amazing. So of course, they are going to ask you what you do. I mean, that's only polite. You've asked them, they ask you. So you pull out your book, and I actually have one of my books here. This is 31 Productivity Hacks for the Busy Entrepreneur. You cannot find it on Amazon because I only give this book away at my events and courses and different things. So this is what I like to carry around with me. It's nice and thin, but it's just a fun book that I did. So when you introduce yourself, you pull out your book. If you've got a nifty way of introducing yourself, so I would say, hi, I'm Kim. I'm the Extraordinary Word Ninja. And people are like, oh, that's pretty cool, right? And so, you know what, I hand them the book and I say, you know what, I love to work with professionals like you who are looking to expand their business and become the authority in their niche and attract business to them. And I hand them the book. So the first thing they do is they grab the book, they look at the back of the book, they open up the book, they start flipping through the book, and something will grab their attention and they'll read it. Now, if they just open up the book or look at the book and put it down, then I know they're not interested, and I just take the book back and conversation goes on and it ends. But if they're reading it and I'm watching them read this, and I make a couple little comments, but I don't say much till they're kind of done reading it. And then when they close the book, I grab it back from them and I say, you know what, would you like a copy of this yourself? And, you know, if they're interested in the book, of course they're going to say yes. But then you look at them, and this is why you grab it back while you ask them the question. So you grab it back and you say to them, you know what, unfortunately, there was no way I could bring copies for everybody here today. And this copy here, well, this one's special. When I first printed this book and the box came and I opened the box, this was my first copy. And so this is my special copy for me. But what I would love to do is I would love to send you a copy of the book in the mail. I've got a ton of them at home. I can get it into the mail to you tomorrow. Now, there will be some people who will not hand you their name, address, email, phone number, that kind of stuff. You'd be surprised how many people will. They won't even think about it. They'll just hand you that information because they want the book. They've met you in a professional setting. But you know what? I've done this in grocery stores. I've been in the grocery store lines with professionals, you know, because they have to grocery shop too. And I've done this in stores and it has worked. So, you know, this isn't just at networking events. You can do this anywhere. You can do this sitting on the bus. You can do this standing in line. You know, wherever you meet people, you can do this. And most people will write their name and address and phone number down and email and down for you. And you thank them and you tell them you're going to get it in the mail. And then you, excuse me, sorry, I've been sick for a couple of weeks. You get it in the mail to them the next day. You wait about 7 days. Then you're going to call them. But guess what? You have a reason to call them. Have you ever been in a situation where you generated a lead and you really didn't know what to say, so you didn't make the phone call? Because what do you say? How do you transition this conversation into business? And you don't want to seem pushy and salesy and aggressive. So when you call them, you just say, hey, it's Kim from RTI Publishing. Remember I met you at the wherever, and you were looking at my book and you wanted me to send you one. Well, I put it in the mail for you, and did you get it? Ha. See, now you can start a conversation. And anything that they've read that they liked is their problems that you can now address, add value to at the conversation. You can now ask them if they'd like to have another call, because you don't have a lot of time today, so you keep this conversation short. But, you know, would they like to book a 30-minute consultation with you, and you can help explore their problem and give them a lot more value. You're now in that process of turning that person, that lead, into a client. And it's all through the power of being an author. Now, writing a book is not easy. Now, well, for me, it's easy. I've written over 100 books now. But it wasn't easy when I first started. And so there's 10 big challenges to writing a book. So who do you write the book to? Because I promise you this. If you write the book to everybody, it will be wishy-washy, it will be ineffective, and you really need to listen to this. This is a huge secret that people don't realize. If you make a wishy-washy book that everybody reads, nobody will like it, your reviews will be horrible, and you will get no results from this book. So you need to know who to write the book to. Then you need to know what to write the book about. That's not easy either. Now, I have got something, a great free gift for all of you. And I'm just typing this in as we talk. I have answered those first 2 questions for you in a video. So if you have ever thought about writing a book and you don't know who to write the book to, and you don't know what to write the book about, I have done a free video for you. It's almost half an hour long that will show you who to write the book to and what to write the book about. And so you want to, you want to know those two things. Then how do you create the outline of your book? How do you write your story so that it attracts people, so people want to work with you after reading your story? How do you write a chapter? Now, there is no formula for writing a chapter, but there are elements that you need to include in your chapter because it makes it powerful and people will want to keep reading. How do you edit your book, especially if English is not strong? So how do you write and edit a book when English is not your strongest subject or language, or maybe even your second language? How do you format your book? This drove me nuts. I spent 2 months trying to figure out how to format my first book. I spent so much time on Google, I think they were going to shut me down. Like, how do you do paragraph settings? How do you do a header? How do you do page numbers? How do you get it so that everything looks nice and neat and uniform? Like, these are not easy things when, you know, you haven't taken courses on Microsoft Word. And so how do you format your book so that when people read it, it looks amazing? How do you create an eye-catching cover for your book? Because, you know, everybody judges a book by the cover. It's true. How do you post this book to Amazon? How do you choose the categories? How do you rate your book description? How do you price this thing? Like, there's so much just on getting it up on Amazon alone. And then finally, how do you use this book to build your business? So I'm just about out of time here, but I want you guys to take advantage of the video. And here's the thing. I've been creating an online course. It starts September 2nd, and I'm doing a 90-day book rating challenge with lots of prizes. So underneath the video, make sure that you check it out, because I'm offering only once. You will never ever see this price again. I'm offering the course at 80% off, because I know what it's like not to have the money to be able to get the course I needed to do what I want. So I'm giving you guys all this opportunity, but it's only one-time opportunity, because when the official course launch happens, the price is going to be a lot more. So take advantage of this. It's 80% off. So hopefully this has helped you today to see that, you know what, becoming an expert and becoming an authority is not as hard as you think. It's about writing your book and then using that book. It's not a field of dreams. If you write that book, business is not going to fall in your lap. That book is a tool. It's how you use that tool that generates the business for you. So to be respectful of everybody's time and to be thankful for allowing me to be on this Facebook Live, I'm going to let you guys go, but make sure you go check out that video. It's free. Just go to the page. It's right at the top of the page. Watch the video. You're going to be amazed at what you learn, and your brain is going to spin with ideas. So I'm Kim Thompson-Pinder, the Extraordinary Word Ninja and Chief Visionary Officer of RTI Publishing, signing off for now. But you know what? Connect with me, contact me on Facebook, watch the video, and we will talk again soon.